All right, so welcome to the next section. We're going to take this cup here. It's got a old layer of, I think it was a pretty design. It's fairly worn out from plenty of use. We're going to take this design off by scraping and sanding down, and then we're going to epoxy some glitter and design on it. So we're going to get down to it.
So as usual, with working with old cups, you want to try and get as much of the old design off as possible. So this one is just felt like a heat wrap. So it's just scraping off really nicely. So you just want to make sure you're being really careful, especially as you scrape towards yourself. Just take it nice and slow. I know I've got it sped up here, so just trying to get through it as much as possible, as quickly as possible for you. So it's coming off in really good flakes and chunks. But this is a 32-ounce cup, so it's got the two different layers with the curve right in the middle. So that curve makes it really hard to get into with the scraper. But as you'll see when I move on to the sandpaper, there's some areas that won't come off with the scraper. So I turn to the sandpaper to get to the bigger areas. One of the great things about this cup is that it's been well used. So it comes off really easily, but at the same time, there's some areas because of its usage, it's on there really tight. So it becomes really tight, so got to go with a little thicker grit of sandpaper. Right here I go to a 60 grit sandpaper to get really dig down deep into certain areas. So as always, don't be afraid to get down deep into it. The epoxy will fill into any grooves necessary. So there is, as I've said before, a lot of discussion on whether or not sanding is necessary. For me, I like sanding. It creates a really good base for everything to stick to the cup, less chance of anything ever coming off. So, and I like this view right here. It really shows where that double insulated portion right there on the bottom, as you see there, is sealed in the middle. So you do not want to puncture that. That'll ruin the double insulated. So there you see it all came off. Now, I don't show the painting process. This is just a flat primer. It's just flat primed. So if anyone ever does want to see the painting process that I go through, just let me know. And it's just straight primer spray paint. So just applying epoxy. There's times where I do go left to right, but I usually just go straight up and down. Try to make them as even strokes as possible to keep an even layer of epoxy, because if you get thicker portions, it will create thick pockets, which will, when you put glitter on, it makes it to where you have to use that much more glitter, or if you don't use enough, we'll take some of that luster out if you don't put enough glitter on. So in my design that I chose for here, so this is Mardi Gras themed. So it's blue, green, and gold is the colors that I'm going with here. And you'll see I'm just doing, little bits at a time, and I keep grabbing my piece of paper. I don't use a pre-formed or pre-folded piece of paper. When I pick up the glitter, the piece of paper, and pour it back into the glitter bottle. So, and I just keep working it. each little area, and I just keep working my way downtown. So just trying to have a little fun and keep moving right along with each little stripe. As you can see, I don't have any planned out stripes for it, working at an angle. Some of them don't come out perfectly even, but that's okay. It still comes out absolutely beautiful. And I absolutely love the way these colorations come out. And as you get into the adding additional layers for where the glitter absorbs into the epoxy.
The next morning,
You just add up. So, and then I let it cure overnight. So, and this is overnight into the next morning. Add in another layer of epoxy onto the glitter. And this is to seal the glitter over it, so that way you have something for it to for your stickers or whatever it is you want to use for saying or whatever it is you choose to use. So you want to get a good coating over it. It's still thin, but a good coating to seal all that glitter into place. So you see my cup there was really big. That's because I'm using it for another purpose, so I mixed up a really big batch.
another day later,
That cured overnight. And then got to sand it down to get everything on top of it. And it was actually a fairly cold morning for being down south. So I had my heater going to get everything warmed up. And because of the style of glitter that I was using, it ended up being really thick on there. So I had to take and sand it down a lot more than I usually do to get it down really, really, really to a thinner coat. So it was a lot trickier than it usually ends up being. And that's just because of how much sanding. So usually it's just a 20 grit sanding down at this point, but this is a 60 grit sandpaper that I'm using to get it down to the nice thin coat. And as you can see, the epoxy sanding is getting all over my sweatshirt there. But it all still works out. And then you clean it all up. I always use alcohol to clean off all the dust. And still, once it dries off, it becomes dull again. So and here's everything that I'm using on it. Organizing it on my cut sheets. And then cutting it all out. These are all just lips with Louisiana based, because this is a Mardi Gras themed. It's got a fleur-de-lis inside the lips. And getting it all cut out, along with some tributaries within the lips. And just multiple different lips. It's all black. And that's just because of the colors in the glitter. So the cutting process takes quite a while, so this is all sped up. You can see my Cricut is running down there in the bottom left hand corner. And what you see got going on here is cutting out the saying, and then we're going to continue on. And then I forgot to add my logo, so we got to add that into the original cut. But then I'm also going to cut that as well as the saying again. So I'm going to skip over the lips, but I'm going to do the saying in a second color because I want to compare the two different colors against the cup. So had to cut my logo as well as a second color.
A few moments later.
So now it's time to weed everything out. So the bigger lips weren't too bad. They weeded out fairly nicely. Granted, some of the tributaries weren't too easy. The smaller lips, yeah, they were real pain. But got them all done. You can see it nice and sped up for you, so you're not sitting there watch me fiddle around with it. Then got to apply some transfer tape to it. Usually getting the backing off the transfer tape is just as difficult as weeding out. But then cut them up in an individual because they're all going into different spots. Then got to weed out both versions of the saying. So and that was quite a bit of joy on that. And so, but it went relatively smooth compared to other areas. So it's always a fun time trying to make it all work. And then got to move on to my logo. The ever important, those go on to the very bottom of every cup that I do now. The Great Green Creations. And then the logo goes onto the bottom. Peel off the transfer tape, trying to make sure that everything stays on. And then the saying is, I leave a little sparkle everywhere I go. I know it's difficult to read. And then the lips are going to be randomly placed throughout the cup. And the cup is very dull from all the sanding. But because epoxy, again, is self-leveling, as I've said before, it'll fill into all those gaps that you can make out on the video. So, got to put on a final layer of epoxy here. Sometimes the coats don't go on as smoothly as you hope. So don't forget to apply heat once you get the layer on. So bubbles still can form even if you apply heat to it, or your stickers or whatever you use can pop up, which can form a pocket, requiring you to sand and apply another layer of epoxy. It can happen. I've had to do up to 3 layers after what you think is your final coat. So don't worry about that. It does happen. Just be mindful of that. So, but thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you follow for more videos. Have a great day.